Timothy was working with the fair, which travels to major cities all across Canada. And he had just finished working in Edmonton and was on his way home.
Yeah, if we had a long enough layover, but we only get 10 minutes here, which kind of sucks.
We picked up the attacker, I believe it was in Brandon. I'm not sure exactly where we picked him up, but he got on the bus. He sat in the front very calmly, somewhere in the front, put his stuff away, didn't say a word to anybody. The bus continued on for, I'd say, another half an hour, and we stopped for a cigarette break. He got out, smoked a cigarette casually. I think he talked a little bit with another girl that was there.
So you'd smoked a cigarette with the victim?
Yeah.
Tell me about him. What was he like?
I never really took the time to get to know him, but he seemed to be okay, right? Just a kid. He didn't look that old. Well, he seemed to be all right. He liked to talk, I guess, but I really didn't take the time to get to know him in a rush, right?
And when he got on the bus this time, he came right back to the back and sat next to the victim, who was right behind me, and put his things above in the overhead there and sat down. He didn't say anything to the victim. The victim was just sleeping with his headphones on. He was leaning against the window, sleeping, doing his own little thing. He wasn't bothering the guy. I didn't hear any words at all exchanged between the two. I didn't see the attacker, talk to anybody else but the one girl there.
He had been on the bus already for over 20 hours. He was catching a nap. He had earbuds in so as not to disturb anybody with his music, and was sleeping.
Like, from Edmonton, I'd had a bad feeling. Closer to when it happened, he was sitting there rocking back and forth, chanting something, but it wasn't in English, so I didn't know what he said. But that was really, really weird. That was when I was like, okay, something's going down, something's going to happen.
Started reading my book again. Probably 20 minutes later, all of a sudden we all heard this scream, a blood-curdling scream, like just hair raising. We turned around and looked, and I thought it was a fist fight at first. The one guy was standing up, and arms were flailing and stuff like that. And but then I saw the guy had a big freaking Rambo knife, hunting knife, and it was covered in blood, and he just kept going at the guy. It was like he was a robot, though. The guy had, he wasn't screaming at the guy, or he wasn't in a rage. It was just very calmly killing the guy.
The first two wounds were very severe to the neck and upper chest, but in those first two blows, the adrenaline kicked in, and Timothy jumped up out of his seat, placed himself over the killer, and ended up in the aisleway, where the killer focused his attention on my son and proceeded to continue to stab him well over 100 times.
The other guy was screaming bloody murder. When I knew what was going on, I ran up as close as I could to the front of the bus and screamed at the driver, "Stop the bus! Okay, there's somebody getting stabbed. Everybody get off the bus now!" A lot of people didn't, understand the urgency of what was going on. A lot of people were still sleeping and stuff like that, so it was a big crowd at the door trying to get out while everyone's staring at this guy getting stabbed to death. We eventually all got out, moved to the back of the bus. Me and the Greyhound driver and a trucker that had stopped, seeing people running out of the bus, figured there was trouble. He stopped, and he came out with a pry bar and some other weapons, I guess, and the three of us entered the bus to see if the victim was still alive, or if there was something that we could do, what was going on in there. And we saw the guy was over top of him, and he was clearly cutting the guy's head off and gutting him like an animal. I don't know.
Decapitated him, cut off everything that could be cut off of him, consumed his eyes, and a third of his heart muscle. The gruesomeness of it all was horrific, to say the least.
So he turned around at that point and saw us looking at him. He started moving toward us. We all jumped off the bus. The three of us jumped off the bus, and the bus driver tried to shut the door, but the guy was already at the door before that, and he was slashing at us. He had his hands out the door. He was trying to pry the door open, and I was sitting there holding the door shut while this, he's slashing at us, and the driver's trying to push the button closed. The attacker ended up getting a good push in there and pushed back, and his arm came out too far. The both of us ran around the bus and came back around again. We didn't want to lose sight of him, so looked under the bus to see if his feet were there. And he wasn't there, so he was still in the bus. So we ran up, pushed the closed door. He was stuck on the bus. Three of us sat there against the door, you know, waiting for him to come out. He kept coming to the front and trying to push the buttons to get out. He went into the driver's seat, and it looked like he was starting the bus. We yelled at the bus driver, you know, he's gonna take off in the bus. So the bus driver disabled it somehow. I'm not sure how he did it, but he came back and said, yeah, he's not going anywhere. At that point, we were still all guarding the door, and we watched him return back to the victim. We went around to the front of the bus to see what was going on, and that's when he brought the head up, and he came right calmly right towards us with the knife in one hand, the head in the other. And the three of us were just standing there in shock, and he just calmly looked at us with sunglasses on, dropped the head in front of us like it was no big deal.
And it's starting to get dark, and the cops are there. They were pretty quick. I'm not sure how long, 15, 20 minutes maybe, but that's quite a little hike away. That's an hour road to town. I'm not really sure how long it was, but they got there quicker than what I thought they'd be there. And he comes up and he picks the head up, and he's waving it in the window. I just smoked a cigarette with this man earlier, right? The hit. And he's shaking it back and forth at the window, and it's right intense, right? It's sickening, and I was just making sure. I wasn't worried about myself at the time. I was just worried about everybody else being okay, right? I closed my eyes, and I seen him in the window there just like a madman. I couldn't see really what his face looked like, but he was wearing a black shirt, and he was a tank, right? Holding his head up in the window, like he's right in his right mind taunting the cops with it. I was like, oh, yeah, really? But it was just disturbing. And there's children and old ladies, like older senior citizens and stuff that was on that bus. I'm not worried about myself. I got to worry about them, right? We were just going home and going to a vacation or whatever, and somebody got murdered on our bus that we could have probably talked to and not know it, right? What if we sat next to him?
I still feel like maybe there was something, when that had happened, there was another kind of big guy beside me, and I told him, you know, give me a hand, maybe we can, let's get this guy, but the other guy took off, and I wasn't, you know, I feel really, really terrible for the guy that got killed. I mean, the poor guy, he didn't even see it coming, right? It's terrible.
There were police officers on the scene from about 10 minutes into the attack, and the preceding standoff took about 4 hours and 48 minutes that the RCMP took to assemble their task force, show up on the scene, and then stood by and did nothing for 4 hours and 48 minutes while this man ravaged my son's body and cannibalized my child. Eventually, at about 1:30 in the morning, Vince Lee threw himself out of a bus window in order to be apprehended. And when he was apprehended, he was found to have my son's ear, nose, and tongue in a baggie in his pocket. The internal organs of my child were in 4 to 6 different locations on the bus in bags.
From the accused himself, barely a whisper, but new evidence of what happened to a young man on a bus from Edmonton to Winnipeg could not be more appalling. And we should warn you, the details are graphic. They were entered today as Vincent Lee stood before a judge in the Manitoba community of Portage-la Prairie. As Crystal Gomansing's here to tell us, the victim's family heard every disturbing detail as well.
Kevin, members of Tim McLean Jr.'s family sat right up front in the courthouse here in Portage-la Prairie. And when the Crown prosecutor started sharing some graphic details about what happened on that Greyhound bus, some of those family members started crying. Others just held Kleenexes up to their face. The body of the 22-year-old stabbed to death on board this bus was beheaded, mutilated, and cannibalized. Those and other graphic details were shared today in court as the Crown attempted to get a mental health assessment on the accused, Vincent Lee. Joyce Dahlman told the court after the suspect was arrested and searched, police discovered body parts in Lee's pants pockets, what appeared to be an ear, part of a nose, and a portion of a mouth in a white plastic bag. After hearing that evidence, the judge granted the Crown's request. Outside the courthouse, Dahlman said she hopes Lee will be able to stand trial.
A psychiatrist will assess him to determine if he understands the process, if he understands the function of the judge, if he understands the function of counsel.
Lee arrived at the courthouse today in shackles. Again, he refused to answer questions from the judge. Lee lived in Winnipeg for a short time after he came to Canada from China in 2001. He studied English at a university in Winnipeg before moving to Edmonton in 2006.
the man who beheaded a fellow passenger on a Greyhound bus may soon be walking the streets of Winnipeg unsupervised, and the decision is causing concern. Vince Lee is schizophrenic and was found not criminally responsible. After years of medication and therapy, doctors believe he presents little risk to the public. But there is some concern now about Lee's safety. Katie Nicholson explains.
It sickens me.
It wasn't the news Carol Dedeli wanted to hear.
Now he's going to be walking the streets of Winnipeg. I'm horrified by that.
Nearly 7 years ago, Vince Lee beheaded Dedeli's son, Tim McLean, on a Greyhound bus in western Manitoba and ate parts of his body. Lee suffers from schizophrenia. He was found not criminally responsible for the killing and has been living at the Selkirk Mental Health Centre ever since.
Mr. Lee, or the former Mr. Lee, I should say, was held not criminally responsible on account of his mental illness. That mental illness has since been treated, and in the expert opinion of his physicians, he is in recovery. So I don't believe that there's any risk to the public here, and I'm taking the lead from his treatment team on that. He'll try his best to reintegrate back into society. We know that some of the factors that contribute to recovery from schizophrenia or from any other mental illness are more than just medication. He'll need to find adequate housing, employment, social support in his community. All of these things will help to ensure that he recovers and thereby ensure that he doesn't reoffend. He will, I would predict, have ongoing treatment. You don't have to receive a court order in order to receive ongoing treatment. So if his psychiatrist, if his treating team feels that there is any risk of harm to himself or to others, they're obligated to report that anyway and to compel Mr. Lee to receive treatment. So, you know, this will be difficult for him, as it is difficult for the victims' families to see him released in this way. But in Canada, we do believe that that justice is served here proportionally, and that people can and do recover from all kinds of mental illnesses.
Lee remained in a mental facility in Selkirk, but in 2012, he was allowed to go out if he was accompanied. By 2014, that was no longer required, and by 2015, he could visit Winnipeg and applied to live in a group home. Last year, he was granted an absolute discharge by the Manitoba Criminal Code Review Board. He no longer requires supervision, and he goes by a new name, Will Baker.
Bye.